Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Mhm.
I'm VK, and today I'm joined by Nexa, our AI agent, to help us unpack this kind of interesting situation we've got brewing in the Indian stock market.
Definitely a fascinating time to be watching the Nifty 50.
You know, it really
We're seeing
is.
some signals that seem to point in opposite directions.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Nifty 50 has dipped, what, about 10% since its peak back in September 2024. And the Sensex is looking pretty similar.
Hmm.
Could make an investor pretty nervous.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you've got this like record level of investment coming from Indian citizens themselves, mostly through what are called systematic investment plans or SIPs.
Yeah, and those record SIP contributions hit a pretty big number, 26,459 crore
Wow.
in December of 2024. So
That's huge.
that kind of enthusiasm from domestic investors usually signals a pretty bullish sentiment. So how do we make sense of this? It seems contradictory.
Yeah, it really does. On the one hand, you've got these major indices down 10%, but then on the other, you've got all these individuals showing, pretty strong faith in the market.
Right. So it seems like we need to untangle a couple of threads here to really understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think we should start with why Indian investors are so into SIPs right now.
Okay, yeah.
It's interesting.
I agree. I did see that market expert Sandeep Sabharwal called it an equity cult. That's kind of taken root in India.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
It is.
But it does seem like there's this belief that constantly investing in SAPs, no matter what the market does in the short term, is a solid long-term strategy for building wealth.
Makes you wonder why the Nifty isn't reflecting this positive feeling, though.
Right.
If so much money is flowing in through SAPs, shouldn't the index be going up?
Well, it turns out there are other things going on here, and I think one of the biggest is what foreign institutional investors are doing, or FIIs.
Ah, the FIIs.
Yeah.
They've been in the news lately with all this selling they've been doing.
Yeah.
Almost $2 billion pulled out just in the first week of January 2025.
Yeah, that's significant. And it basically cancels out what's coming in from domestic SIP investments.
Wow. It's kind of like a tug of war.
Yeah.
And the FIIs have the upper hand at the moment.
So it's not just about how much is coming in, but also who is doing the investing and where is the money actually going.
Exactly. And Sabharwal also pointed out another factor that might be diverting funds away from the Nifty 50, all these initial public offerings IPOs,
Oh, right.
and qualified institutional placements QIPs.
So even some of the domestic investment isn't even impacting the Nifty 50 because it's being channeled to these new offerings.
Yeah, that's right. But let's go back to the FIIs for a sec.
Okay.
Their moves are obviously a major factor in how the Nifty is doing right now. Why are they selling? Is it just nerves because the market's so volatile?
Well, I mean, there are definitely concerns about high valuations that are making some investors hesitant.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more than that. We have to think about the global picture, like all the uncertainties coming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's monetary policies.
Sure.
And of course, the potential impact of President Trump being back in the White House.
Right. All of that adds to this sense of investors around the world wanting to avoid risks. A lot of them are looking for safer places to put their money, and right now that often means U.S. markets. They're seen as more stable with a stronger dollar and higher bond yields.
It does seem like a lot of things are coming together to create a perfect storm of uncertainty.
Totally. And then just to add another layer, there's this technical indicator that's been flashing warning signs, the death cross.
Ooh, that sounds scary.
Yeah.
I have heard people talking about this death cross.
Yeah.
What exactly is it, and why is it making investors nervous?
Basically, it's when a short-term moving average for a stock or an index, the 50-day average usually, crosses below its long-term moving average, which is usually the 200-day.
So it basically means the short-term trend is turning more negative than the long-term trend.
Exactly, and it's often seen as a bearish signal that maybe more declines are coming, but it's important to remember that it's not foolproof.
Right.
There are plenty of times where the market has gone against a death cross.
So it's something to watch. We shouldn't freak out about it on its own.
Yeah, it just adds to all the mixed signals we're already seeing.
For sure. And don't forget about the Indian rupee hitting that record low of 85.93 against the U.S. dollar not too long ago.
Yeah, that's definitely another thing that's probably feeding into FII anxieties.
Right. A weak rupee makes investments in India less attractive to foreign investors.
And it adds to worries about India's economic growth.
Of course.
The IMF just revised its GDP growth estimates for India for fiscal year 25 down to 6.4%.
Wow.
Which is a pretty big adjustment.
It really makes the decision to buy, sell, or hold in the Nifty 50 a tough one.
Yeah.
It feels like every signal has a counter signal.
It does make you want to hear what the experts have to say, though, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they can help make sense of all of this.
Definitely. Let's hear what some of the experts think and what they're predicting.
Sounds good.
So we've got all this uncertainty around the Nifty 50.
Yeah.
But, I'd like to look for the bright side. Are there any sectors or companies that seem like you're doing okay in all of this? Any little bits of hope for investors out there?
Well, even with all the uncertainty going on, there are some analysts who are pretty optimistic about the Indian IT sector.
Really?
Yeah.
IT often seems to be like a measure of how healthy the Indian economy is overall.
Yeah, it does. And there were some good Q3 results from TCS recently. They're one of the biggest IT companies in India,
Right.
and they've got a positive outlook on the future. So some analysts are feeling pretty good about the sector's ability to hang in there, even with the market being so shaky right now.
So maybe Kit can ride this out better than some other sectors.
Could be. What about you? Any other bright spots you're seeing?
I don't know.
Well, this one might surprise you, but some analysts think that Trump coming back to the White House could actually create some opportunities for certain sectors in India that are export-oriented, like IT and pharmaceuticals, and maybe even defense companies.
Well, hold on. I thought Trump was all about America first and those protectionist policies. How could that possibly be good for Indian companies?
It's all about those unintended consequences.
Okay.
His policies, like those tariffs on Chinese goods, could actually make stuff from India more competitive in the U.S. market.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about things like auto parts, solar equipment, even chemicals. If those Chinese imports get more expensive, American businesses might start looking to India for cheaper options.
So those tariffs could actually open a door for Indian companies to get more market share in the U.S.
Exactly. And what about the defense sector? What do you think about that?
Yeah. How would Trump's policies affect that?
Well, he's always been big on boosting military spending, both in the U.S. and among allies. And he's really focused on making the U.S. military stronger in the Indo-Pacific region. So that could mean more contracts and partnerships with Indian defense companies.
So even with all this complicated stuff happening globally, there could be some wins for certain Indian industries.
Mhm.
It's all about understanding the details and adapting as things change.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we can't forget about the Indian government's own plans for development. Rahul Ghosh, that analyst we talked about earlier,
Right.
he thinks that the Amrit Kal and Viksit Bharat agendas are going to be major forces driving growth in sectors like infrastructure, capital goods, banking, and green energy.
It makes sense that they'd keep putting money into those areas. They've been investing a lot in them already.
Exactly. So we've got IT, pharmaceuticals, defense infrastructure, banking, green energy, all maybe offering some opportunities in 2025. That's a pretty wide range of options.
Yeah, it is. Which reminds me, a really important thing for any investor, especially when things are uncertain like this, is diversification.
Oh, yeah, that's key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Spreading your investments across different sectors and asset classes can help you manage that risk and maybe even let you take advantage of more growth trends.
Diversification, that's the golden rule of investing. But it's so easy to get caught up in the hype around one particular stock or sector and forget about spreading that risk.
It happens to the best of us.
Staying disciplined and not letting your emotions make your decisions are super important for navigating any market, especially one as volatile as we're seeing now.
Right. So we've talked about what's going on and what might be some good opportunities.
Yeah.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to think about our listener. What are some key questions they should ask themselves as they try to figure out what to do next in this market?
I think a good place to start is, do you feel more like those optimistic domestic investors we talked about? Or do you agree more with the FIIs who are worried about global risks and valuations?
Yeah, that's a good one. That helps you figure out your overall approach to the Nifty 50 right now.
Exactly. And that leads to the next big question. What's your time frame for investing? Are you after quick gains, or are you focused on building wealth over the long term?
Because if you're in it for the long haul, the ups and downs in the short term might not be as big of a deal.
Exactly. And lastly, maybe the most important question of all, what sectors or specific companies match up with your goals and how much risk you're willing to take? Do your research understand the fundamentals and choose things you believe in for the long run?
It all comes down to making informed decisions.
Absolutely.
And that's really what the deep dive is all about. We want to give you the knowledge and understanding you need to navigate all of this and invest with confidence. We've given you a lot to think about today, haven't we?
We have. It's like we've handed you this big, complex puzzle, and now you got to figure out how to put all the pieces together so you can see your own financial future.
Yeah, and sometimes when you've got a tough puzzle like this, it helps to have someone show you the way.
For sure.
Maybe reach out to a financial advisor who can help you figure out your risk tolerance, put together an investment plan just for you and make sense of all the stuff we've been talking about.
A good financial advisor can be a lifesaver.
Totally.
Think of them like your Sherpa guiding you through the, sometimes dangerous, but also potentially super rewarding world of the financial markets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've got the experience and the know-how to help you navigate and avoid those pitfalls. But even with an expert by your side, I think it's important to zoom out a little.
Right.
We spend a lot of time on what's happening right now and what the opportunities might be.
Yeah.
But what about the Indian economy as a whole? Like, where is it headed in the long run?
We haven't really talked about the big picture yet.
Huh?
What do you think? What's your take on India's long-term economic outlook?
Well, I mean, India is going through a huge economic shift right now.
Yeah.
The population is young and getting more dynamic. There's a rapidly growing middle class. And the government is really pushing infrastructure development and technological advancements.
Right.
All of that points to some serious growth potential in the long term.
Totally. So even though things might be a little bumpy in the short term,
Yeah,
it seems like India and its stock market are on track for an upward climb over the long haul.
that's a great point, and I think that's the key takeaway for our listeners today.
Yeah.
Don't let those short-term ups and downs make you lose sight of the bigger picture. India's growth story is still being written, and for long-term investors, that's a pretty exciting opportunity.
Absolutely.
Great way to wrap things up.
I think so.
As always, we encourage you to do your own research, stay informed, and make choices that fit your own financial goals.
And remember, this deep dive is for educational purposes only.
It's not investment advice.
Always talk to a qualified financial advisor before you make any decisions about your investments.
And with that, this is VK signing off. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and happy investing.